It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines across the globe this week. And we're going to start here in Nigeria because former President Goodluck Jonathan has linked his election loss in 2015 to betrayal within his political circle. Jonathan, who was seeking a second-term re-election at that time, lost to the candidate of the newly formed All Progressives Congress, Major General Muhammadu Buhari. On Thursday, during the 70th birthday celebration of a former Deputy Governor of Edo State, Chief Mike Ogiadome, who is also Jonathan's Chief of Staff, Jonathan called the 2015 episode linking his loss to betrayals, describing Ogiadome as one who served as a loyal ally. Jonathan said that loyalty was a rare thing in the Nigerian political space, and recently there has been widespread speculation that the former president may contest the 2027 election on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP. However, he has yet to confirm the reports. Well, that's definitely an interesting one there. There is no loyalty in politics, as people often say that there are no friends in politics. There's no permanent friends, only permanent interests. And we've seen a lot of that play out recently, even in the lead up to the 2027 elections. But I'm surprised here that former President Goodluck Jonathan has said this, not because I'm surprised about betrayals, but because it seems that he is teasing this potential entry into the 2027 race, but without, officially declaring anything.
Well, I wouldn't want to read too much politics into what is said, given the nature of the ceremony where he made, those remarks. It was at Chief Michael Ogiadome's 70th, who, of course, was his chief of staff, when Jonathan was president. And, of course, you would expect that a man like Jonathan would be asked to come and pick the mic and speak. Essentially about the person and the persona of the celebrant, Chief Ogiadome. One of the things that, of course, he would be expected to say, which he said, was to extol his virtues as Chief of Staff to him when he was president, as an individual, as a man of honor, and as somebody who was also in politics at the time, was a deputy governor. But then in going further, beyond just speaking glowingly about Chief Ogiadome. Of course, yes, one might be tempted to think that he was straying into politics, particularly now that people think that if the PDP, of which he's still a member, is looking for a one-termer to counter President Tinubu, for the 2027 elections, that Jonathan, apart from Peter Obi, has said that if you pick me, I won't mind to spend just 4 years. So it is Jonathan that people will be thinking about. But then what he has said, will it be helpful when he said that the events of 10 years ago, in 2015, when he lost the election to Buhari, how helpful will that be to a man who might be seeking or who might be persuaded to return to office? What set of people are you going to work with if you have already concluded that loyalty is in low supply in Nigerian politics? And what was the point of saying all that anyway? Maybe for me personally, I would have expected him to, to wait until his memoirs will be out so that we can have a full understanding of what actually happened. But of course, like we have said on this program, he's still a young man. Maybe he's waiting for his own 70th before a memoir will come out. And then we will know those who actually betrayed him. But you see, when you are big to a certain level in politics, betrayers will come. And they are not limited to politics. They are part of corporate governance. They are very heavy in corporate life. They are also part of life anyway. But when you get to a point and you are big enough in politics globally, betrayers will not be the only thing that you'll be looking at. You'll also be looking at loyalty. And we have seen in many people who have commanded a large number of armies, from the Sardauna to Awolowo to, even up to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Along the line, there will be betrayers. But then if you're unable to count on a good number of people who stood by you throughout, like Jonathan, was counting on Ogiadome, then maybe you would have failed as a politician, because betrayals will be part of life. So what is the point of saying that, well, this is what Nigerian politics is all about? It is everywhere. It is everywhere. Where
it's not uniquely Nigerian.
It isn't. Where ideological positions are low, virtues are in short supply. And then when you say that, are you trying to discourage people from going into politics? Or to say that even if you choose to run in 2027, it is unlikely that you will have a huge army behind you who will be loyal to you. So for me, it's a bit of a delicate thing to say, in the manner that you said it. But, this one, it is Mr. Jonathan's right to say that
and also,
he was betrayed.
But he's also saying, when others were fleeing, you stood by me, which I think is a nice thing to extol someone on their birthday.
Oh, absolutely. He said nice things about Ogiadome, and I thought that was in order. All right, we proceed. President Bola Tinubu has departed Abuja to commence a working vacation in Europe as part of his 2025 annual leave. A statement by Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Ononuga, said the vacation will last 10 working days. The president will spend the period between France and the UK before returning to the country. This marks the second time President Tinubu will be taking an annual leave since assuming office. In October 2024, he spent 2 weeks on vacation in the United Kingdom, during which he was expected to reflect on his administration's economic reforms and hold consultations. Earlier this year, in April, he also embarked on what the presidency described as a short working visit to Paris to review midterm performance and plan ahead for his second anniversary in office. So our dear president is on the march again, going abroad for his annual leave. I think that what is clear after 2 years, this is, he has settled into his third year in office. I think what is clear is what the president has demonstrated, that on an annual basis, he will take his annual leave, maybe not at a go. We actually don't know what they're entitled to. How many days in a year, or how many weeks in a year as a president or even a governor entitled to. All we hear is that, I'm taking 10 days, I'm taking 5 days, I'm taking 2 weeks, on holiday, which will be pretty much in order. And I think that part of what will be necessary actually is to always say to the people that this is what I'm entitled to. It's not likely that I will take the entire 4 weeks or 6 weeks, as top corporate players, in the organized private sector do. It is unlikely that you will find any MD go for 4 weeks at a go. So if the president says, I need to go and rest for 2 weeks, I think it's very much in order. What people might worry about is why abroad every time? Just like he did last year, just like he did in April, just like, people might want to also remind him that each time you travel, you tend to, like many people do when you go on an official visit, that's usually the 1 day, 2 days, to look around, to shop, to rest, things like that, that you tend to always want to do that. Yeah. And then after returning from Brazil, barely 1 week or thereabout, he says he's going on an annual leave. So people might ask that what happens to the wisdom that the lead president, Musa Yar'Adua, displayed when he was president. He also applied, for his annual leave, but at least for 1 or twice of the years, he chose to spend the leave in Nigeria. Not only did he go, I think at one point, he went to Obolokatu Ranch. Not only did he choose Nigeria, he also told us, Segun Adeniyi, who's the chairman of the editorial board of the Disney, was a spokesperson there. He told us clearly the books that he would be reading, because he was going there, to take time off, to relax, to recalibrate and everything. Those are the sort of a thing that I think we should at least add to the bouquet of what we are trying to do. Nobody should can tell the president that you do not have the right, even at his age, to want to go on an annual vacation. But then when it is always France or UK and never Lagos, never Badagry, never, Ekpa or Ikorodu, or somewhere that the president is interested in developing so that when other people come after him, they will say that this is the place that President Bola Tinubu spent part of his annual leave. I'm not saying that he does not have the right to go abroad. He absolutely has, the prerogative to choose where he goes. But then add a bit of Nigeria to it. The same way that most American presidents, most UK prime ministers, many leaders in Europe will first and foremost choose their countries to spend their vacation. I think that's what people will be interested in at this one.
Yes, yeah, you've said basically everything, because no, you are right. First, it is important for them to, one, communicate how much annual leave is he entitled to and how much is he going to take. Second of all, people are seeing this not in the context of the number of foreign trips that he has taken, but they have been trying to show us the benefits of these trips, whether it be Japan or Brazil. Even the vice president of Colombia coming here, they're saying we're working and this is why we're taking these trips. And I also think that we are starting to see something that I consider is very beneficial for Nigeria, which is that in this new world order, we are making more partnerships with other countries in the global south, right? And we're seeing shifting a multipolar global world coming up now in the Trump era, where America has left Europe on its own, and we've seen North Korea's Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping and Putin standing together in China. We've seen Qatar and the UAE also coming into Africa and making ties, particularly in East Africa and Central Africa. And so it is very good and positive that Nigeria is making economic ties with countries in Latin America.
It's commendable.
It is absolutely commendable, and I think it's very important for us, with global black and brown people to come together and make these ties in the face of everything that's going on. Looking forward to what's going on at the UN General Assembly in a couple of weeks, where America has now rescinded the ability of Palestinians to even attend. Just to attend, and the UN is at the same time moving some of their offices to Kenya, and so we're seeing the importance of Tinubu's trips. And we always have to contextualize that.
Absolutely.
But you are absolutely right to say that every time France, every time England. Every time France, every time England. And then Nigerians worry. We like true communication here. Like, we need to know when he's going, when he's coming back. And also, the most important thing is, does governance suffer? They always say when the president is gone, the vice president is around. But very importantly, Rivers State state of emergency is going to expire in that 10 days working. Is it 10 working days or is it 10 days full stop? Because
10 working days. I think
they said yes, because by the 18th of September.
That's 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yes, but by the 18th of September, the state of emergency in Rivers State is going to expire. So is the president going to be back? Or are the people of Rivers State going to have to wait?
I'm not sure if he needs to be back for the governor to return. If he doesn't willy-nilly announce an extension, I think that it should be assumed that, I'm just saying, but of course, things will become a lot clearer in the coming weeks. And in any case, it's a working vacation, and he can make his announcement right from there. We know, of course, that many big announcements, had come in the past while the president was away. So let's hope for the best. Let's hope that Rivers will return to full democracy.
Let's hope for that. Let's move to our next story, because a court in Finland this week sentenced Simon Ekpa, a self-styled leader of the indigenous people of Biafra government in exile, to 6 years in prison on terrorism-related offenses. The Finnish court ruled that Ekpa participated in a terrorist organization and incited crimes for terrorist purposes. Judges found that between August 2021 and November 2024, he used his large social media following to stoke tensions in the southeastern Nigeria and to promote armed separatist groups. According to the court, Ekpa supplied weapons, explosives, and ammunition through his network, while also urging followers on X to commit crimes in Nigeria. Ekpa was arrested in November of 2024. He denied the charges, but was convicted on multiple counts, including aggravated tax fraud, a violation of Finland's Lawyers Act, and he will remain in custody pending an appeal.
Okay. All right. I mean, interesting one, isn't it? Or are we proceeding to the next story? No. All right.
No.
We're discussing Simon Ekpa. Okay. So That was a big one during the week, which everybody thought that, okay, so finally, it looks like, a judgment finally came from abroad, this time around from the district court in Finland, which found Simon Ekpa, quite guilty on a number of charges, including, tax evasion, including, not being, they found him wanting in some lawyers' rules, as it affects Finland. And of course, naturally, it has generated so much debate. What is interesting is how many people are still looking at this from a political ethnicity, kind of way. I have seen many people who spoke on social media with their face, quite open, talking about the injustice to the Prime Minister. At the time, I was confused.
Who's the Prime Minister?
The same confusion that, that I had. I never knew that Simon Ekpa was being referred to, is still being referred to by a section of some of his supporters as the Prime Minister of the fanciful Republic of Biafra that they think that Simon Ekpa is fighting for. I've also seen or read online about a certain lady in the United States of America, I think in Philadelphia or somewhere like that, who is also speaking loudly and who says that she's the acting Prime Minister for the state of Biafra that they are hoping to create, and that they will make all the necessary, they will take all the necessary steps to appeal the judgment and ensure that the Prime Minister, gets justice. I find it quite worrisome that this is the thinking on the part of some people. If the judgment, if Simon Ekpa had been tried in Nigeria and then he had been handed a 6-year sentence, okay, to be served concurrently, maybe, of course, you can imagine the sort of reaction that will follow. Oh, it's because he's fighting an Igbo cause. Oh, it's because he's doing that and all that. But he was found guilty. He was tried. He was investigated, tried, and sentenced in an European country, Scandinavian country of Finland, where he has lived for a number of years, where they traced practically everything he did between 2021 and 2024. And they found him, undoubtedly guilty, unanimous decision by the judges. I think that should serve, in my opinion, as a lesson to those who may be confusing agitation for the need to have a country of Biafra with what Simon Ekpa has been found guilty of, which is inciting terrorism and encouraging, funding terror to harm people towards making Biafra a reality. Those are two clear, different things. And I don't think that the judgment was about whether you have the right to desire to have a Biafra or to desire to have an Arewa country or an Udua nation. It is the manner in which you went about it. And having investigated you, they found that you were guilty of cybercrime incitement. You were guilty of sending arms, money, ammunition to people to arm individuals back home, and that you were also guilty of tax evasion. All those things coalesced into the sentence that I believe that he has spent a few months in prison already. Maybe those ones will count as to how many years he will spend in jail. But I think that this is a lesson to those who might think that social media can hide you. No. If government of any country decides to want to go after you for certain reasons and then go through the route of the law to investigate you, try you, and then sentence you, frankly speaking, you can't hide.
Yeah. I agree on one very important thing here, but I think one very important thing here, but it is that it is brilliant that he has been sentenced It is absolutely brilliant, and I hope it sends a message to every Nigerian.
He has a right to appeal, though.
He does, but I'm happy that we have a judgment, at least in the first instance, and he can, of course, appeal to whatever levels that the Finnish courts allow him to. But, you know, it's been said over and over again that I hope this sends a message to people in the diaspora, because oftentimes you have, particularly people in the diaspora, who lived very polished lives, you know, very, very,
polished.
very cozy lives, and then incite tribal violence or bigotry. And something here, of course, Simon Ekpa went further in the funding. He's been found guilty of, you know, funding terror, not just inciting it, but funding it. That means he is responsible for the terror and mostly the terrorizing of his own people.
Even if he can directly kill anybody,
of course, and
responsible.
You know, there's vicarious responsibility even in law. But something here that we need to talk about is that in Nigeria right now, we're dealing with different things, as you've come different agitations for independence, and you can agitate for whatever you want to agitate for, and then you're at liberty to do that. But when you cross the line into inciting the polity, arming or funding terror network, then I hope they pick you up one by one.
They should be picked.
I hope they pick you up. I'm not on any, you know, and especially, you know, because, you know, sometimes when we have these conversations, people act like, I just want to say anything I want to say, and they feel like there are no consequences. There are consequences, and particularly when the consequences are other people's lives.
Absolutely.
A lot of these people who incite violence in this way are not on the ground. They're not the foot soldiers. They're not the children who can't go to write their exams, their WAEC exams. They're not the people who can't go to work on Monday or in the mornings. They're not the market women who have to close down shop.
They're not those who are struggling with data, with the cost of data.
Yes, they're not. They're sitting very comfortably in an air-conditioned, you know, snow is trickling on their roof, and they're inciting the polity in Nigeria. And I think that is absolutely abhorrent. And I really hope that this sends a message. But the only thing I don't agree with that he said, very importantly, is that, if he was in Nigeria and then they found him guilty for 6 years, if it was in Nigeria, the trial will not be done in the 6 years, and that's a shame.
I'm saying that
I know. But I want to highlight that because, of course, the Nnamdi Kanu trial is still going on, and that's been nearly a decade now. And I think it shows us within this country, right, that our justice system grinds slowly. And what it also does is that it denies justice, not just to the people who are going through the trial, but those who are on the ground, who are still having to deal with the realities of someone who's, you know, seen as a Simon Ekpa or whatnot.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to take it seriously, because justice delayed is justice denied. Thank you.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, and I support it. You know, we must improve on our justice delivery system. And I also very much support what you said about, you know, not being aligned when it comes to all these agitations, etc. Including, and we're not talking Simon Ekpa alone, including, you know, a few individuals all over Europe still doing the same thing, you know, for other regions. And the idea that if you do not support that cause, you are betraying, your tribe or something. That nonsense must stop.
We'll talk about it with our guests.
All right. We'll proceed. The United Nations has called on Cameroon to guarantee free and transparent elections as 92-year-old President Paul Biya seeks an 8th term in office. UN Human Rights spokesperson Jeremy Lawrence voiced concern over rising restrictions on opposition parties, citing banned gatherings, irregular voter registration, and the exclusion of candidates from the race. Biya, Africa's second longest-serving leader after Equatorial Guinea's Teodoro Obiang, has ruled since 1982, but is often absent due to poor health. His government faces corruption allegations, Boko Haram violence, and a separatist conflict in English-speaking regions that has shut schools and displaced thousands. Biya last won re-election in 2018 with over 70% of the vote in a poll marred by irregularities. Paul Biya again gunning for 8th term at 92.
Yes.
At 92 years. Africa, what is the color of our problem? I don't get it. Cameroon.
You know what? I would just say that for me, this statement by the UN is very empty. It's empty to call at this point in time to say, oh, we're calling for peaceful elections.
Conduct of the election.
Kamto has been banned. That's the main opposition candidate. Has been banned from participating in these elections. And very interesting with Paul Biya, because of course he is the second longest serving, but the longest of Obiang in Equatorial Guinea since 1979. Before the internet, before Ronald Reagan, before the Berlin Wall fell. And of course, the third longest is Museveni of Uganda.
All Africans.
Of course. But when you look at these leaders, something that they have in common is that very often they're being held there by corrupt people who have been entrenched in the system. Paul Biya is certainly just a figurehead that some people within the Cameroonian political party.
I'm sure exactly aware of his surroundings.
They roll him out a very few times, once in a while, but really he's not very well. He's possibly not there. There's been reports, of course, that Obiang in Equatorial Guinea is showing signs of dementia. On the other hand, though, we have seen Museveni giving us sit-ups recently, and he ran when he went to announce that he's going to be running for elections of January of 2026. But something we're seeing, like beyond the age, right? I do think that this type of posturing by the international community, saying, oh yes, make sure that the elections are fair and free and peaceful, is if they come and now say, oh yes, it was a great election cycle. How are we going to? How can you really judge when you have opposition being, already removed from the running? But another thing we have in Cameroon, though, is that part of Biya's strength is that the opposition is scattered. And when you have so much, and I say this because of Nigeria.
From the fact that he may be right in the middle of why they have been scattered.
Of course he is.
That's part of the politics.
But it's part of the politics, and that's why I'm connecting it to Nigeria. Because if you don't have a united opposition, because by the time, Biya is announcing that he's running again, you had so many different people running to also announce they are running. If you have 15 candidates, I believe, or 13 candidates are currently running against Biya, if you have a divided opposition.
I get your point totally. I get your point. But then we can't in any way, shape or form compare what is happening in Nigeria to what is happening in Cameroon.
Of course not. Nigeria is actually a shining star in that element.
In absolute terms, a shining star. The only time that an attempt was made, we know what happened. For tenure elongation. It is a crying shame that this sort of a thing has endured in Africa, which is why I disagree with former President Obasanjo when he came up with the idea of Afro-democracy as an alternative to the Western type of democracy. We have not. What are they doing in Cameroon, in Benin Republic? All those other
in Togo with Nasigbe, he's changed the constitution.
All of them. That's Afro-democracy. You remove the. Is it not going to happen in Ivory Coast again?
With Ouattara.
With Ouattara.
Yeah.
It's a crying shame. In 1998, as a journalist at The Guardian, I was on the observer mission to where was Omabongo again?
Gabon.
Gabon. And he had spent, I believe, about 18 or 21 years as at that time. And you recall, of course, that eventually when he left his son.
Ali Bongo.
And then we asked him at the presidential palace that, Mr. President, why are you running again? And he said, but there's democracy here. He said there were 21 other opposition. And that his own question to us, international observers, journalists, everything, was that do you think that any of them trying to unseat me was coming to spend 8 years? And that struck me as the type of mentality that our African presidents had as at that time. And I felt bad, felt ashamed for Africa. That was in 1998. This is 2025 of the year of the Lord. See what is happening in Cameroon, in Togo, in, practically, a number of places in Africa. I think that maybe part of what can dissuade them cannot come just from the internal uprisings and complaints and advocacy. But then when leaders like that are being treated as pariahs outside, that it cannot be democracy when you have spent 30, 40 something years on the seat. It can be democracy when you are president of a country in your 90s. It's, it can be right. But of course, if we say it is democracy, it is democracy.
Yeah, because it does not look like anyone is going to unseat Museveni in January. It does not look like Biya is going to be defeated
Next
even
month,
at
12th of October.
Yes, it's Afro-democracy, you call it?
It's Afro. No, that's Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. He says it's Afro-democracy.
Well, now let's move on to our next story, where Africa's latest installment of tragedies. A massive landslide this week devastated Sudan's Western Darfur region, killing more than 8,000 people and flattening an entire mountain village. The disaster struck the village of Tarasin in the Jebel Mara area after days of heavy rain. Rebel group SLM, led by Abdul Wahid al-Nur, said only one survivor was found and appealed for urgent help to recover those buried under mud and debris. Images posted online show whole sections of the mountainside collapsed onto homes. Darfur's governor, Mini Minawi, called it a humanitarian tragedy beyond what people can bear and urged international aid groups to intervene. But ongoing war between Sudan's army and the RSF paramilitary has made much of Darfur inaccessible, complicating rescue and relief efforts.
Such a sad situation in Darfur, in Sudan. It's sad that in the middle of an ongoing conflict, torrential rain, and of course, biting poverty, now you have a landslide that has wiped out an entire village with more than 1,000 already killed. It's sad, and this is a country that can deal with it on their own, which is why both the government and the rebels are calling for intervention.
Yes. One thing I would say right now is that in Sudan, and there's so many times in my life that there has been a Sudan crisis, and we're currently in a situation where they have a cholera outbreak, a significant cholera outbreak.
Add cholera to it, it's
yes.
sad.
They have a hunger crisis, and a lot of people feel that with the eyes on Gaza, people are also not seeing that people in Sudan are starving. There is a humanitarian crisis. They have the largest number of internally displaced people, I believe, in the world right now, right, with the fighting going on between the rebels and the government forces. You also have a situation where the RSF, the rebels, are being funded primarily by foreign powers, this multipolar world that we're speaking about. And in the midst of that, you have one survivor.
Only one.
One out of 1,000. I don't know if I'm happy for that person or sad for that person, because I do not know what it would be like to survive something that wipes out your whole village. Everyone you know.
I'm not even sure if that individual will be happy for him.
For him, yes. I think, and we're thinking about the scale of disasters that single Sudan is facing. I think it's definitely something to think about. And we also have Ebola recently in the DRC.
That's true. I thought we were going to touch on that. Sorry, in the DRC.
Yeah.
About 13 people dead already, about 26 cases.
Yes.
What it means is that the rest of Africa must be on high alert.
But luckily for us also, the world has developed, vaccine, and it's the Zaire strain which responds to the vaccine.
Yeah.
And the DRC has had multiple outbreaks since that original Ebola crisis, and they've been able to, handle it well. So we hope they'll be able to curb this.
We conquered Ebola once, and I'm talking Africa. We should conquer it for good this time around.
Definitely. Well, that is all we have for you on the week that was.